From Wacko's Chaco Studio, I am Ashwin Chaco, and this is The Fruitful Life, a show about the business of creativity and the stories behind the creators that have made their dreams a reality. To get started, tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Kathi Burke, and I am an illustrator and visual artist. And I'm from Waterford, but I've been living in Dublin for say about 12, 13 years on and off, hence the kind of vague accent. It's a mismatch.
So tell me a little bit about who you are, who you were as a kid. Were you always creative? Did you know that illustration was a job and that was something you could do, or is that something you discovered later in your life?
I was probably exactly as you would imagine I was as a kid, so pretty much the exact same. I was super into reading, drawing, just making art. I was known as the arty kid for sure. Always in my own world, a dreamer. Making stories was really important to me as a kid. So writing stories, creating lots of characters out of dolls and toys. Like I was very organized with my toys, and all like Barbie dolls would have kind of character sheets and like backstories, and that I had them like filed.
Oh, serious?
Really, I just love creating stories, and any kind of video games that were story creation. I would spend. I was like an indoor kid, I think, spending time on making stories up, drawing, singing, performing. Just really, really arty, yeah. But also very introverted and really shy. I think as a child I was like painfully shy, and from finding my people, I kind of grew out of that. Not until about secondary school, college, did I kind of start getting a bit more confident. Yeah, believing in in my talent, I suppose, and being able to express myself.
And what sort of led you to the path that you're on today, or the career that you're on today? Walk me through the steps you went through.
Well, actually, to answer your earlier question, I didn't know that illustration was a job, for sure. So I had always thought that if you're arty, you're either going to be an art teacher or a painter, and they're the two kind of paths. And I knew that my parents were going to have to pay for my college, and I would have been the first person in my family to go. And so I didn't want to just say I'm going to be a painter, because I think that would have scared them. It would have been too much if they say I want to go to art school and paint, and they would have been like, well, this is a bad investment potentially. And so I said I was going to do graphic design, and but I always knew I was going to go to art school. I went to NCAD in 2008, and so I was working on a portfolio all through school, sixth year or whatever. I went there, and I just loved it. I think I just always knew I wanted to do something that was going to express myself, and I love learning as well. So I know every opportunity I was given to work with new materials or just to learn a new skill. Like when you start in college learning graphic design, especially, you're learning all these new softwares and kind of fundamental theories behind balance and color choice and all these things. And I just ate it up. I absolutely loved it. But one thing just leads to another in this career. So leaving college, I was like, okay, well, what you do is you get loads of internships. That's what you do. That's how you get known in Dublin. So I just did a bunch of internships for a year, and then found myself going home after work in graphic design studios, going home and illustrating for maybe friends or for myself or just for, I don't know, my Tumblr at the time. And after about a year of that, I was like, I think I just want to do this full time somehow. And I mean, it took a few years for me to go full time illustration. Graphic design definitely ruled my career for a long time because, people need it more often, and it probably is a bit more dependable, I suppose. Putting posters, gig posters, or logo designs and this kind of thing. I was doing it for a while, but my illustrative style was present throughout, and I have been slowly kind of cutting back on graphic design then ever since, until I don't know, I find myself here now where I've actually said I'm not doing any more graphic design, but that's just me because I've always been more of a illustrative person. But it took me a long time to figure that out, I think.
Was there a crux or a moment where you're like, I'm fed up of having to do graphic design work? now I'm a position where I can just, fund myself, fund my life,
Yeah.
fund my career through illustration.
I'm going to put my hands up and say it was the pandemic, like completely put a halt on all my work or the way that I was working. And it's only when I stopped and had a bit of silence, I was like, oh, the way I was working before was not good for me. Because I think it was just the way I was feeling when I was making graphic design work. I didn't feel myself. I was overthinking all the time. And I just know that that's not for me because I like to work a lot more freely. And I find that everybody learns from making mistakes and learns from failing. But I think when you're working for graphic design clients, people with deadlines, people with big budgets and things, I'm like, I don't have time to fail. I need to get this out. I need to get it right on the first pass and make life easier for the clients and everybody else down the path of this project. Whereas I was like, I just want to make things that I think is really fun and I want to like make some stuff that's shit and no one's going to see and I want to, yeah, just play a bit more. That's, yeah, the pandemic just, I had nothing else to do but just play. And so I did. And now I was like, okay, now I've learned what I need to do, what I need to avoid. Took me a while still, even like when real life came back a bit more, people were calling me back and wanting to do jobs, and I said yes to a few and then regretted it almost instantly. And yeah, I think I've learned now like what I need to do to stay happy and productive and creative. I think is the most important thing.
You mentioned there that you wanted to be able to fail a little more. Can we dig deeper into that? Like why do you think it's important to fail? What are sort of the lessons that failure has taught you?
Well, I am just, oh, I don't know, I hate it, but I am a perfectionist, and I think I've always wanted to like get things right, and as I mentioned before, like make things easier for my clients and do things for other people. And I would hate to fail for somebody else. If somebody else is going to get blame for a messy job or something, I think it's unprofessional, I suppose. But as an artist, I just know it's important to fail because that's literally the only way you learn. Like the only way you'll grow is by having things to overcome. And so, yeah, making mistakes and testing the water, like playing with new, even techniques for illustration, something that we've been doing for a long time. I just think trying new methods and stuff. Sometimes you just get a brainwave, when you're not expecting it, and that comes from failure, I think. Because if I'm doing the same thing this repetition I hate, same thing all the time, the same process all the time. I'm like, okay, well, I know this tick. I know how to do this. I'm not learning anymore, and I'm from a very education focused family, like a lot of teachers in the Burke family. My dad, my sister, a load of my cousins, my aunties. And so I don't learning is extremely important to me. And I when I'm writing little signatures in kids' books from the kids' books I've done, I always write never stop learning because I think that's the thing that makes life interesting and fun and worthwhile. So yeah, you need to fail to learn.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you mentioned is play in conjunction with that. So can you tell me about what it means to you to build a practice of play? Because I think it, like you said, it's so important to play. And I think play and failure are quite correlated in the sense that sometimes, in games you will fail, and then there's a learning process from that. I'd love to hear your insight into it.
Yeah, I think that it might be instinct to think like I've failed, so therefore I'm a failure. But in play, yeah, you fail all the time. Things don't work out. You go down the chutes and up the ladder, and you don't. It doesn't mean that you've failed. It's just that's part of the game. And so for playing with creating artwork, I actually got this brainwave from a Stephen Fry interview where he was mentioning about creating art. And he was talking more in a comedic sense or in a literary sense, but it applies to across all art forms. Like if I sit down and say, I'm going to make art, like you're setting yourself up for a really hard time because the bar is so high, your own expectations or other people's expectations of you are so high. Like I need to create a piece of art now. It's going to wow people. But his method for creating art is to begin by making craft. So something that's quite, I won't say mindless, but like mindful. So crafting something, whether it's quite methodical, like I like to cut paper or collage things, or kind of look for inspiration on Pinterest or something that feels kind of more gathering and crafting. And then during that process, that lead to, oh, I got an idea. And now I can create the art. But I think sitting down and saying, I'm going to make something beautiful now, doesn't always work. I think you need an hour or two before I even begin, just to like, no one's going to see this. It's just messing. It's just playing. And I kind of hope that I do something that makes me think, something a bit unusual or, messy or shit or something that, that's unexpected.
What I wanted to ask you with that idea that, you almost have to iterate and play to get to a position where you're, I suppose your creative juices are flowing. So I'm curious, does play sort of help you in places of creative block? Because sometimes, illustrators, artists, we all face creative block at some point, and
It's like a flow weekly where some days you set yourself up for all this stuff I'm going to make, and you're like, not today, not happening today. For some reason, it's just not flowing. And I think by forcing yourself to do it, I mean, a professional to say, I'm going to tick all this stuff off and I'm going to get all this stuff done no matter what to meet my deadline. But I think just from pushing myself to do that, I found no fun in that, no joy in that, to force artwork, which is meant to be playful and fun. Like at the end of the day, I'm drawing like colourful pictures, like, and it shouldn't be painful to do that. Maybe if you are a more, if your artwork is meant to represent more sadness and stress, then I'm encouraged to force yourself. But I think the play, it just reflects the type of work I'm creating as well. If I'm trying to communicate with children, I think play is a good way to get through to them, or even my audience for, I would say, my more grown-up work, which is still very childlike and naive. It should be fun, and I think the best work I've created has come from a place of fun, and I'm always happier with that. I'm always happier with the result of something that I knew I had such a good time making. And like I have work that has gotten lots of great feedback, but I know myself that I did not enjoy making it because I put myself under too much pressure to create it. Longer projects, I mean, like, or book projects, or maybe kind of big projects, with big clients and stuff. And like, I didn't really enjoy making it because I felt under so much pressure to get it done, that I don't even look at work when it's finished. And like, that's not a good sign. Whereas the stuff that, even some of the stuff that I have in my home, is work that I've created that I did it like on my sitting room floor with, like music on, and I don't know, just in a relaxed state of mind, and there was no expected outcome. It was just like, I have this idea, I think I want to see what it looks like, and then I'm always happier with the result because it felt fun and free. And that's, I think, that's what creating art should be like for me, in my mind.
I think you hit the nail on the head there with that idea of not expecting anything when you start creating. Because I think your ideas then have the space to evolve and to pursue your curiosity. But if you take away that sense of curiosity and the ability to explore, then suddenly you're boxed in so far that there's only so much output that is possible within that.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you started this, all asking about me as a child, and I think as artists, you're always trying to communicate with your inner child, or like the past you. And they would create art in a fun, free, exploratory way, in kind of a playful environment, and you wouldn't whip a child telling them to, work harder and faster and more like this. It would be cruel. And so we shouldn't do it to ourselves as grown artists.
And the other pressure I think that a lot of illustrators put on themselves is around the idea of their style. Like, style is so important. It's such a I think it's such a heavy topic for illustrators because that's all they're obsessed about. What was your approach? How did your style come about? What's sort of your thoughts on it?
I think it is a touchy subject because I'm like, I don't even recognize my own style from like 3 years ago. I feel like it changes like every year or two. But to other people, it's like, well, no, it's all that's obviously Kathy's work. But I know there's things that maybe I would notice or other illustrators would notice. I'm like, I think it changes all the time. I don't feel like I have a very fixed style, but for me, it always comes back to like listening to that inner child again of like no rules and just going with what comes naturally. So like me personally, when I'm sketching out an idea, I have like a super rough line, and for some reason I got rid of that from my work over time because it just didn't suit my graphic clients, and line work and roughness just didn't seem to mesh with what people expected of me. And then the last few years I've been bringing it back in, and I'm like, oh, it feels like me again. Like I was really, I think just going with what came instinctively, like, oh, that's a comfortable style that I really like. But I like I was informed a lot by software, by that I learned in college. Since I studied graphic design, illustrators work only in Illustrator, and we all work in vectors, and it's about making things sizable for the client, and that doesn't always work for when you're experimenting. Like I don't want to go straight in with vector because you are, I don't know, but that's what I did for a long time, and it was because I'm working in Illustrator. My work looks like this. Then I started working in Photoshop, and my work looks a bit different. Then I went on to Procreate on my iPad. I'm like, oh, it looks different again, and it started feeling more and more like what comes naturally to me because it's just freehand, more like pen to paper, and now I'm going back to paper again. So it just changes. I think based on the medium I'm using. But that is style, I think, isn't it? It's what comes naturally to you. But I mean, that's bad advice for somebody who's like in college and like, oh, I don't know what comes naturally, because you're seeing all these amazing portfolios on Instagram of people who are inspiring you, and artists that you love and all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of hard to like, I don't know, it's hard to find which one you want to be like. But I just gather every bit of inspiration, and I feel like it gets through in my work somehow. Like I build Pinterest boards for like every job or everything I want to start, and I can see that's come from some of these images. And I think by doing that, even just starting there, like who do I love, and just building everything, then you'll start to see the things that you're drawn to, whether it's like the colors or is it line work or is it graphic shapes, or and then try doing that yourself. Because nobody has the same exact bank of inspirations. Like we all come from different places. We all have different music styles that we like or places we like to go. And so all of those things are in your inspiration bank, not just like other graphic designers or whatever. So I think, yeah, inspiration helps a lot as well. Inspiration and medium.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me the four key, like I think style is the bridge between who you are and what you want to say, and the style is just the it's basically that vehicle to get that message across. And obviously you are inspired by certain people, and that's going to inform you, and then you have to iterate on that and innovate with that information. And in that innovation of technique, color, shape, texture, those are the four like technical choices that you'll have, that then within that you find that piece that's yours.
That's gorgeous. That's such a sweet spot as well, because some people might, texture is not important to them, so they can focus on color or like, it's because I studied visual communication was the name of the course at the time. So only now it's coming to me, I'm like, oh, that is what I learned to communicate visually. But like I like to say like, what is the simplest way I can get this message across? And because I like simplicity, so it might just be lines or it might just be blocks of color or whatever, but it's just like shape and color are my two starting points. So I like to get balance on the page and get the shapes together. Then choose my colors. That's always the funnest part for me. Get my palette together, put them on my shapes, and then I love to like then just clean up every line, make everything really smooth. But yeah, then recently I've been like, let's just do the opposite, and I'm just keeping it to myself. But like lots of let's not clean up the shapes and see what that looks like as well. um, but yeah, I think texture is something I'm trying to play with more as well. Actually, that you just mentioned it because when you work digitally, even though you can add digital textures, I'm missing something that feels like messy and real from looking at a screen all day. So there's lots of things that I'm trying to do, just in sketchbooks and stuff that like feels more, I don't know, like luscious or tactile. Yeah, bits of like, I don't know, just I love texture. I loved textiles, and I love like torn paper. I'm just like, okay, let's gather loads of paper for a couple of years and see what I can do with it. So don't go. That's why I didn't invite you to my studio. It's folders of like scraps from Ireland's Own magazine.
That's cool. I think that's important because our taste changes as we grow, and I think that's an important thing to remember. You don't have to be stuck at the style you started out with. It needs to evolve with you because your ideas are going to shift, your perspective is going to shift, and how you view it is going to
That's
be
so
affected.
true. And you know what? That is very important because if you get known for a style, um, other people are going to expect that from you all the time. And so you don't want to feel like obliged to stay the same when it is about changing and learning, right? So, yeah, like anytime that I felt trapped is because people were expecting something that I didn't want to do. Maybe I'm a bit like, I don't know, headstrong that way, and that like I just want to keep changing and learning. But it's you can't really do that when somebody else is paying you to do, like paying you to experiment. So it's kind of something I do in my spare time. But yeah, I definitely would encourage people to like not feel that just because you found a style that works for you that you need to only do that. You can do loads of different things. And have like a portfolio that reflects varied interests and tastes.
That's interesting because I would say keep your portfolio pretty niched because otherwise you're basically having to prove to the client that you're capable of every little element you've put in there. Whereas I'd say that's what social media is for. Experiment, see what's working, see what's not working. How are people feeling with it? Because it's, yes, it's an expression of your work, but at the same time, you still should be able to communicate the ideas to those people, right?
Yeah, yeah. I suppose when I said portfolio, I did mean more like website and well, that is a portfolio or a social media. But I mean that's actually advice that I was given when I was just starting out, and it's very good about. It wasn't so much the style at the time because I was playing around with styles, but definitely the content. So I was advised if you love doing food illustrations and you've become known for doing at the time I think I was doing lots of maps. So you become known for doing maps. You don't want to do maps anymore. Why are there so many maps on your website? Take them down because people are going to keep asking you for what you're showing them. So yeah, I suppose if you're going to show people lots of your line work and then you get pissed off because people keep asking you for line work, you're like, well, yeah, they only know what you show them as well, and people only know what you're capable of if you let them know. Like you're not going to get successful by hiding your talents or your skills. You need to post your failures as well as your wins. Like yeah.
And so were you always freelancing or were you in studios at any point in your career?
So the year after college, I was doing internships. I did a 3x3 internship, which was 3 months in detail, in Zero G and in Atelier David Smith. So I did 3 months in those three studios, and that was great. That was like in studio, really great experience. But then after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to be an illustrator now, and so I just went freelance from then. That was 2012. 13. I think the start of 2013, and yeah, so I've been doing it since then, and like I'm actually so proud of myself in the past because I was like, I fucking had no idea what I was doing. I had no money, and I was working for pittance. Like every single job was like less than €50. Do you know, like, and I was just like, everything's going to food and rent, and that is it. But I just kept going, and I worked some like part-time jobs on the side. I used to be DJ, and I was DJing in the evenings and then working in the day. I just put a lot of hours in when I was younger, like and so yeah, it just built up and built up that way. But like word of mouth and just uh, saying yes to things was what got me through the first few years. So just like saying yes and learning a lot, definitely.
And what are some lessons that you picked up from, because that's quite a brave move jumping in after just doing an internship to just be like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take on the whole, freelance world and, be my own boss. So do you have any like key lessons, or if you were that age now, what would you tell yourself?
I would say yes less often because I was saying yes to everything that came. Well, I needed it financially. That's the thing. Like there's kind of a balance that I just needed to say yes to things. But I think I would. It's hard to know. I definitely value organization a lot when it comes to my work. Now, there's been times where it's kind of overtaken the creative process because that's it. You can't really be free if you're being strictly managed by your boss, like your time and everything. But I think like just organizing yourself, like if you're going to be freelance, no one's going to tell you like when to fill in your invoices. No one's going to tell you when to do your taxes. No one's going to tell you, I know when to reach out and send portfolios or apply for grants, or like, you have to just know all of this yourself. And so it is like it's a balancing act between the creative and client communications and financial obligations and all this stuff that isn't as fun. So how I normally do it is like I put all of my admin work first thing in the morning because I hate it and I hate answering emails. And any client who's listening to this will know that I'm fucking awful at getting back to people. But it's just because I'm like, I do maybe 2 or 3 days a week of just like getting that stuff done. Because I feel like I can't be creative if I have it hanging over me. Like things to do, redoing your website or, updating social media, and like it's all part of it. And I think that's a lot of people need to know that if you're going to be freelance as an artist or graphic designer or anybody in the creative arts, you're going to not only have one role, you're going to have many roles. And it's about like keeping, I don't know, keeping that separate from your creative work, I think. Giving yourself space to be creative, that's separate from, because the younger me, when I first went out, I'm like, I'm going to be business bitch. I'm going to be just like really professional. And because that's what I learned in the graphic design studios. And it's about like getting things out so fast. And I didn't give myself time just to relax, like for sure. And it got me far, but I just I can't keep up that pace forever. Like no one can. I'm just trying to do everything. So the older I get, the more I delegate. Get an accountant, I would say, number one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Filling in Ross online was like the worst. I think it was like a couple of years where I did that myself. I'm like, no, this is months of stress for. I'd rather just pay someone else to do it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know the Irish tax system, so I was like, okay, help somebody. And I just asked around to my mates. I was like, you have an accountant or somebody who could just walk me through it. And they were reasonable enough price, so I was like, it's worth paying the price.
Totally worth it. For all the mental load that you'd have to carry around for a full month, like in October normally would just have been ruined with like to go back through all of your old expenses and like reliving your previous year through your bank account is not fun. You're just like, why? Like, especially my 20s, it was like pub, takeaway, pub. I was like, oh. So, yeah, accountant, definitely pay your taxes, very important.
And, with freelance, there is always an ebb and flow when it comes to commercial work, or at least that's been my experience. Do you find, like, what do you do in the quiet moments between clients?
Mm. Well, at the moment I'm in college part-time. So that was something I took on during 2020. I started like thinking like I'm feeling stagnant. I wanted to learn something new. And so at the moment, like the past 2 years, it's just been my downtime. I prioritized my master's degree, and I think that's it. I'm terrible. I don't give myself time for downtime, and I'm only learning now how to do it. Like, so if I don't have clients coming in, if I don't have something that I'm actively working on for a client, I'll have given myself a side task, like a personal project. Normally, it's prints. It used to be prints because I don't have a print shop anymore. But it was like prints for a print shop, or just time to doodle and time to just, I don't know, do something new. But at the moment, it's just reading and writing. So lots of that between clients, and I actually welcome the quiet times the last 2 years just because like I needed it. But like January is just talking to other illustrators in the last month or two. Like January, February is just like everyone's getting real antsy. Like where are all the emails? And then like once they start coming in, then you're like overwhelmed, and yeah, it is an ebb and flow for sure. And you always forget it until the next year, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about this January thing. You need to have your savings like for those quiet months.
Yeah, for
Especially like
sure.
December's always, well, usually December's like just crazy. Like everyone wants everything tomorrow.
Yeah.
Loads of campaigns. Everyone's using up like the end of their budgets or something. I don't know what's going on, but it's like everyone's very creative with new ideas in December, and then they go quiet after Christmas.
How often have you found that in those downtimes when you have pursued a creative project, a personal project, that has led to more work? How, like, what's the importance of personal projects?
Oh, Ashton, it's like the most important thing. For sure, the most important thing that, well, I've learned that like every single time I've done a personal project, it's just led to amazing client opportunities. And it's just about like, oh God, I wish I gave myself more time to do more personal projects. They always lead to growth and learning. But like the last time I gave myself a block of time just to work on something personal was 2021. And I was like, I'm going to do an exhibition. And I come up with the idea before COVID, like back in 2019. But I had no time to do it because it was like clients, everybody, just normal way of life. And then like the world ended. So I moved back to Ireland and I was living alone. And I was like, I'm just going to work on this idea. And luckily I had friends who own a gallery space in Hen's Teeth, and they were like buzzing about it. So we pulled it off. And like just that was just an idea I had, and I had the time to do it. And I just believed in my concept.
You tell us a little bit about the idea. What was it?
So yeah, the exhibition was called The Snug, and my idea was I wanted to make a place that was like, it was a pub that existed in my world that my artwork lives in. So my artwork is definitely very childish and colourful. So I wanted an Irish pub that would exist in my world, if that makes sense. So to have ephemera on the walls framed, kind of knickknacks that you'd find in kind of the Glimmer Man, that kind of pub. And because I love pub culture and I love it as like a representation of Irish community. Um, and so I just wanted to create lots and lots of little pieces of artwork that were, I don't know, it was like Irish culture, my own personal history, but was in the walls and in the artwork. Because you often find, in pubs, the owner's granddad, like a photograph of him on a fishing boat or something, like somewhere in the pub. And I wanted to do beer mats and wanted to make the textiles, and just had this big idea, and I had the time to work on it. So it was really colourful, and we installed this pub snug in Hen's Teeth, like with a full pub front at Burke's pub. I did a light box, Guinness light box, and we just like had so much fun. It was just anytime I suggested an idea or they suggested an idea, it's like, yeah, let's do it, let's try it, let's make it. And it was just that kind of energy and not so much fun. And then at the like 11th hour, Rosie from Hen's Teeth was like, I've been on the phone to Diageo in the background to Guinness, and they said they'll put in a tap for the opening. And it was actually COVID restriction time, so it was like, I think it was time or scheduled tickets, or you can only have a certain like, one or two people in at a time. So you'd go in, you get your pint pulled, and you could drink your pint in the pub snug and like get the full experience. And that was great. It was so much fun. Went better than I could have imagined. I was really proud of it because it was just completely me, no client interference, nothing. And then just a year later, Guinness wanted to do a collaboration with me because that they were then featured. They're kind of written into it at the 11th hour, like I said, with our tap. Even though Guinness was put in at the last minute, the aesthetic of the pub still spoke to their brand. It was fun and it was new. I think Guinness really, I mean, Guinness has always been kind of a champion of Irish arts anyway, and it just spoke to them and they wanted to do a collaboration. So that was completely unexpected. I did not initiate anything and I didn't expect anything from this other than it just being my own idea that I had when I was missing home. And then it became now like a collaboration of, we did t-shirts, bucket hats and prints last year, and we're extending the collection this year. And it's just like completely unexpected because of something that was just personal, completely personal. It was like I couldn't get more personal than this idea. I had it in a pub I was living in Portugal before the pandemic, and it was an Irish pub, and like had all the things that would make an Irish pub, but it just didn't feel right. And I was there and I was like, oh, I don't know, like I was really missing home. And then I came up with this idea, and I literally called Greg, my hen's teeth, the next day. I was like, I have this idea, like I want to build a pub. And yeah, I'm just really happy with the whole story of that little idea becoming something like a collaboration, like my dream collaboration, really, because it's a brand I really respect. It's a drink I always drink, and it just it feels like a nice full circle moment for me. Because when I went to college, I was living on Thomas Street when I was going to NCAD, and like when I first moved to Dublin, the smell of the Guinness Brewery was like Dublin. I just loved it. It was so comforting. It was really new, and it just feels like super full circle for me to then be working with them. Yeah, I love it. And it's like just one of those things, like you say, it leads to another job. Like ideas are like seeds, and they just grow without you even doing anything. Sometimes it's really nice. It's also luck, I think, maybe, and also hen's teeth doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the background, and I just didn't have to even know about it until Rosie called me and was like, "Oh, by the way, Guinness wants to do a collaboration." She'd been working on it in the background, because I'm not a good person at approaching companies or suggesting collaborations, or I'm not really good at, what to say, like emailing and like back and forth and talking about money and stuff. It's just not in my wheelhouse. I'm not good at like talking about contracts either. Tend to avoid that kind of thing. So again, like the accountant thing, if you can have somebody as a go-between, it does help, because then you're just the artist and then they're the bull fighting for you.
So do you have an agent?
Kind of. Well, I do. So I work at Usfolk in Belfast, and I've been working with Mel in Usfolk this year because there was a couple of jobs that were very tricky, many layers of like many little contracts in one bigger thing. And I was like, I can't. Especially because I lost my mother last year, and at the end of last year, I was like, I'm not in the headspace to be planning. I was like, I had somebody else. So Mel was doing a lot of that, and I work with hen's teeth as well, who it just happened with the Snog and the Guinness project. But she was finding someone who like understands the business and is on your side. It takes a lot off. But like I only started working with like agents in that sense in like the last 6 months. Before that, I was like, I can do everything myself, and then sometimes it's not. Like, as I say, I'm not good at asking for more money, and if you're signing contracts, people expect you to ask for more money, and I was like, no, it's okay, I'll just sign it. And then like a few years later, like I really regret signing that. Like I'm sure I could have got more, but I'm just not like I'm not confident enough, but I just don't want to feel like greedy or something. I don't know. Asking for money to draw things. Sometimes it feels like I'm living in a fantasy.
I think that that's something that we all feel, and it's learning to see the value of what we bring to the business. And as soon as you realize that, you're like, oh yeah, I'm totally worth this.
Completely. Oh, completely. Like, yeah. And I also stopped charging by the hour or by the day, because that was a thing that was kind of suggested as a legitimate form of how to invoice clients. And then I learned, like, actually, if I'm invoicing by the hour, I'm being penalized for how good I am at my job, because I'm fast and I can get an idea and get it on and I could get it over to you in a couple of hours. And like, why should I be earning less because I'm good? Like, you know, it doesn't make any sense in our industry to charge by the day or by the hour. It takes as long as it takes, and you'll pay what I ask you to. She says convincingly.
So what is one piece of advice you would give a young aspiring designer, creator, illustrator, whatever their role is?
Just one piece of advice would be, oh, don't be afraid. Yeah, I think being afraid of what people are going to think of your style or what you're trying to say, or I don't know, just like how your process is. You get afraid that people are going to judge you or think that it's not original enough or it's not new enough, or yeah, I think that a fear would hold people back a lot from being creative, and from putting their work out there. Like I said, you can't shine if you're hiding, and just show everything. Like I think that's really important, because I love seeing people's processes, and I love seeing people's I don't know, just like you're doing now, you know, like expanding and learning and trying new things. Like that's just the most exciting thing. So like the industry is never going to be oversaturated. Just keep making things. I don't know. I want to give so much advice. I It's because of the industry I'm working in, like, and I work with children. I'd say about like half of my audience are kids, and so I just think always like starting from a place of fun and a place of play, and starting with a good message. I think that those are like things that I think are very good starting points for creating good art. Like, what am I trying to say? And if it is just like, I want to say smile, you know, then that's a perfect place to start. Your artwork always makes me smile, and I think like that's like, I don't know, for me that's the ultimate goal from creating something. It's like, oh, someone laughed or someone smiled, win, like done, yeah.
And what is your hope for the future?
Keep learning. Well, I hope for the future. I have big plans. As always, ever evolving plans that change day to day. Of like, no, actually, maybe I'll do this. But my plans for the future are to move away from client work, in terms of like big or small advertising work. And I want to just make more art for exhibition work, shows, and I'm working on some books that I'm going to write as well, because I've worked as an illustrator over many non-fiction titles, but as I said to you before, I love storytelling, and so there's many stories that I'm working on for children, and that might also go on to the into different media. So like I'm playing with TV writing and stuff like that as well. So yeah, just different media completely. Just learning new things, and because I know I feel like I hate stagnating, and I want to keep learning new things and trying new things and failing. Hopefully, fail a little bit and then expand and bloom. Yeah, because I feel like there's every artist has stages, right? And so I'm 10 years now into my career, so I think it's time for new stages. Yeah.
And to you, what does the word fruitful mean to you?
Fruitful means, oh, that one's hard, you know, and I should have thought of this because I knew it was coming. It means juicy, and it means abundant, and it means fresh. I feel like it just something that you want to, I don't know, get your teeth into. I'm thinking fruit as well, but fruitful, yeah, fruitful work is it's just like a always ever growing and always inspiring place to be.
Amazing. And last question: if there was any fruit you could be, what would it be?
Ooh, I would be. I'm gonna think hard of this now because I'm not a huge fruit person. I would be an avocado. I'm gonna go savory.
Nice. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me on today's show. And hey, thank you for listening to this episode of The Fruitful Life. I hope you walk away with some nuggets of wisdom. And if you did, please do me a favor and leave a rating and a comment to tell me what you think of the show. Also, consider telling a friend that might like it. As always, be true, be you, stay fruitful.